Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. Later in the show, Evander Scott will tell us about diversity, equity, and inclusion at Honor Health. And we'll learn about Hawan LLC, a Navajo-owned consulting company with Stanford Lake. In the studio with me is Dr. Jeffrey Reynoso, who serves as a regional director at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, where he advances the administration's health and human services priorities. Hello, Dr. Reynoso. It's an honor to have you on our show today.
Gracias. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here on Native American Heritage Month.
Yes, absolutely. And before we get started, please tell us about yourself, your journey, and your background.
Sure. I'm originally from California. My parents immigrated from Mexico in search of economic and educational opportunity. So I'm, as they say, first generation in this country. I grew up in different parts of California, but primarily the Central Valley, which is kind of that agricultural region of California, and inland San Diego County.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. And it's a pleasure to have you today. So tell us, how did you get interested in public health and health policy?
Yeah, I think my first interaction with public health was through medicine, right? My interest in medicine started at a young age. Around middle school and high school, I had to be a caretaker for my older brother who has a disability, and my mom who went through a breast cancer diagnosis. So being, the seven immigrants, you have to play the role of interpreter, health navigator, and health advocate for my family so that they received the care that they needed and deserved. But it was really until my third year of undergrad where I took a public health course in Latino health at UCLA, where I learned what public health was. I learned the language of social and economic determinants of health and how health policy impacts service delivery. So that really sparked a passion in me for public health, and I really haven't looked back since.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing to hear your journey. And can you tell us about your current role? Tell us what a regional director of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is, and why is what you do important?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have the honor to be part of the Biden-Harris administration, and I'd like to say that I joined the administration because it's the most diverse administration in history, and we have people of all backgrounds representing at our highest levels of government. As regional director, what that means is that I'm the key representative for the U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary, who currently is Javier Becerra. And I'm really proud that he's also the first Latino HHS Secretary in U.S. history. And I'm the key representative with our state, local, territorial, tribal, and external partners in Region 9. So I get to interact with a lot of different types of organizations and communities. The secretary often likes to say at HHS, we're not waiting for the American people to come to us, but we're going directly to the American people.
Oh, yes, definitely. And you mentioned Region 9. Where is Region 9?
Yeah, before this job, I didn't really know what Region 9 was, so it's a great question. Region 9 spans multiple states. It includes Arizona, California, Nevada, Hawaii, and the U.S.-affiliated Pacific Islands. And very importantly, within Region 9, there are 157 federally recognized tribes, including the 22 federally recognized tribes here in Arizona. So that means that I spend a lot of time in hotel rooms, in airplanes, and in rental cars, traveling my region. But I think it's the most rewarding part of my job. Is that I can be locally in communities and interface with a lot of different types of folks and understand how our federal health and human services policies are actually being implemented on the ground and what are the gaps, and bringing those perspectives back to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. And what influenced or encouraged you to take on a regional director role?
So I would say two things influenced me to take on the regional director role. It was really hard for me to actually leave my prior job. I had the privilege of serving as executive director of a statewide health advocacy organization, advocating for my community, for Latino health, and I really enjoyed the work that I did there. Was really proud of the work that I did there. But I also have always had a passion for public service. Actually, when I was in high school, I was seeing the inequities in education funding in my local school district. So I decided to run for the student seat on school board. So from a really young age, I was really just got this public service bug. After undergrad, I served a year as an AmeriCorps member at a federally qualified health center in East LA, serving primarily Latino immigrant communities as a health educator. So, I think I would say the opportunity to serve the public, serve the people's health is just something that is innate in me. And so the opportunity to serve for this administration, when the opportunity presented itself, I definitely jumped at the opportunity. And then secondly, and the second reason that's very personal to me, is that there are not a lot of folks who come from the background that I came from that are in high levels in government. So I felt it like it was almost like a responsibility that if I could do this job, and I'd like to say that I'm doing it pretty well, if I could be a regional director for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that I should be in that role to bring in my lived experience and my passion for health equity, so that I can be that voice within government and within the system to uplift communities that have been marginalized, that have been not served or misserved by government, and try to improve conditions to advance public health and wellness for all.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing. You are doing such an amazing impact for the community, and also an inspiration for the community as well, to see themselves like I can be there one day serving everyone. So what are the biggest challenges you are currently facing at HHS, and how are you addressing the challenges?
Many challenges. We're a large agency. We have something like 90,000 employees across the country. Wow. HHS is a large agency that includes many staff and operating divisions. So many may be familiar with IHS, the Indian Health Service. We also have HRSA, our Health Resources and Services Administration, that funds many of the community health centers and loan repayment programs for physicians and nurses and other type of providers. CMS is our Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So if you have Medicaid or here in Arizona Access, or if you're on Medicare, everything, all of those programs are within CMS. But we also have FDA and CDC. So a lot of various agencies and departments. In terms of our priorities right now as a department, there's a few. So I'll quickly run through some of these and the work that we're focusing on currently. The first is Medicaid renewals. So you may be familiar that during the public health emergency, there were some extra financial incentives for states to pause the regular annual renewal process for Medicaid here in Arizona, known as Access. So we're getting the word out that Medicaid renewals are happening again. They're restarting with the end of the PHE, and ensuring that no one who's eligible for Access or the Children's Health Insurance Program or Kids Care lose coverage, and everyone who's eligible and wants to participate in that program is enrolled. The second priority that's related to healthcare access is actually today, on November 1st, we are launching our open enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act marketplace. So for those that don't qualify for access because your income's a little bit higher, there's affordable plans on the Affordable Care Act exchange on healthcare.gov. And under the President's Inflation Reduction Act, there was actually an expansion of financial help to help pay for some of those premiums. And so we really are encouraging and trying to get the word out that if you don't qualify for access, look for health insurance plan under healthcare.gov. Another priority that we hear a lot about as I travel in the region and as I travel in the region with the Secretary is around behavioral and mental health. It's a really big priority for the administration. We launched last summer the 988 Lifeline. So this is part of the administration's comprehensive strategy to address the nation's mental health crisis. So far, we've invested over $1 billion in 988, so it's a huge number. Since its launch last summer, the mental health crisis lifeline has had over 5.5 million calls, texts, and chats. So it's a big number, but it just shows just the need out there. And we also understand that behavioral health, it's really important to have services that are in your language and in your culture. So we launched, for example, the 988 chat and text feature in Spanish just a few months ago. And we've also invested over $17 million in cooperative agreements with federally recognized Indian tribes, tribal organizations, and urban Indian organizations to improve response, ensure access to culturally competent 988 crisis center support, and improve integration and support to ensure that there's navigation and follow-up. And then kind of the last, just to wrap it up, priority that we're really focusing on is health workforce. So during the pandemic, I think that a lot of the challenges that were probably there before the pandemic around recruitment and retention and career laddering within the workforce were really exacerbated. There was a lot of burnout. So at HHS, we launched this summer the HHS Health Workforce Initiative. So the Secretary launched this initiative. And what we're doing is looking at a whole of HHS approach to addressing health workforce. And we're really focused on diversifying the health workforce and ensuring that our health workforce is more reflective of communities that they serve. As we know that if you come from a community, you're more likely to go back and serve that community. And so we're doing this through a couple of different strategies, from expanding the National Health Service Corps for providers that train and provide care in underserved and rural communities. And we're also investing in the Nursing Workforce Diversity Program. And this is to support folks that come from disadvantaged backgrounds to become registered nurses. So that's just a little bit of like the breadth and then the scope of the work that we do at HHS.
Oh, wow, that is amazing. And how does a regional director work with Indigenous peoples? What have been some of the successes?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of my office, so I sit within the Office of the Secretary, and our office is called Intergovernmental and External Affairs. And that's really important because within, we call it IEA. Within IEA, we have a tribal affairs team. And this tribal affairs team was actually established in 2000. And that team, my colleagues, they serve as the official first point of contact for tribes, tribal governments, and tribal organizations that want to access HHS. So, I think that's kind of the front door for Indian country at HHS. And our Office of IEA also confers directly with urban Indian health organizations to understand the unique needs of urban Indians in accessing high-quality, culturally tailored healthcare and social services. But also importantly, we have what is called tribal consultation at HHS. Historically, with HHS, the department has had a department-wide tribal consultation policy that's been in place since 2005. And this policy was developed jointly with tribes to advance the nation-to-nation relationship under Executive Order 13175 on consultation and coordination with Indian tribal governments. Some news that came out of a lot of work this year, including the Secretary's Tribal Advisory Committee. This September, Secretary Becerra signed the new HHS tribal consultation policy when he met with tribal leaders in Indian country This policy fortifies our political nation-to-nation relationship with tribal governments. It also introduces new innovative avenues for us to cooperate in bolstering the health and well-being of tribal communities, so really a true partnership. And this policy provides an update and advances the administration's prioritization of strengthening the nation-to-nation relationship under the President's Memorandum on Uniform Standards for Tribal Consultation, which were issued in 2021 and 2022. Overall, I think what this does is it represents HHS' continued commitment to honoring the nation-to-nation relationship. But, in terms of the work of that we've done with Indian country, there have been a number of successes. I know when I'm out in the field, I often hear all of the issues that are happening, and for good reason we need to address those. But there's been some good progress as it relates to things that we can celebrate. First, it's vital to recognize the invaluable contributions that Native Americans have made, especially under this Native American History Month. And that includes with our workforce. There's actually over 10,000 HHS employees of Native American ancestry at HHS. So that's a sizable number. And it's thanks to their hard work, their influence, and their commitment to their communities that we're able to inform the work that we do at HHS. Some of the wins that we've had in the last couple of years under this administration, we were able to secure what is called a historic advance appropriations for the Indian Health Service for IHS beginning in fiscal year 2024. So what this means is that IHS is now shielded from budgetary uncertainties, and that ensures that the approximately 2.5 million American Indians and Alaska Natives that annually receive care, that care is consistent. You might have heard all of the battles in Congress around budget and continued resolutions, and really because we were able to advance appropriations, it's not going to impact operations at Indian Health Service. So that's really critically important because we know that these are life and death situations. And then I'll just also share that this secretary is committed to advancing Indian health. This actually later this month, we will inaugurate the Hall of Tribal Nations at our HHS headquarters in Washington, D.C. at the Hubert Humphrey Building. This emblematic hall will proudly showcase the department's commitment to tribes by displaying the flags of the tribal nations that make up the Secretary's Tribal Advisory Committee at HHS. So this was led by the Native American employees at HHS, and this is the first department to establish a secretarial level tribal advisory committee back in 2010. So there's a lot to be proud of, but a lot of work ahead.
Oh, yes, that's definitely true and so amazing. So Dr. Reynoso, what is your day-to-day schedule like?
That is a great question. I can't tell you what a typical day is like because it feels like every day is a little bit different. But, I think I'll share that I kind of have my days out in the field, and then I have my office days. So my office days are, kind of your regular log into Zoom, or when I go into the HHS headquarters in San Francisco, really just catching up on the latest developments and updates from HHS across our staff and operating divisions, and just ensuring that I have all the information that I need so that I'm well versed in the topics and the issues that we're covering as I go out into the field. Externally, when I do travel, it's an opportunity. I start really early and usually end pretty late, but it's meeting with, community-based organizations, federally qualified health centers, hospitals, really meeting with key leaders in the community to understand how their programs are serving various communities and what continued challenges and feedback I need to take back to DC.
Oh, yes, definitely. Dr. Reynoso, how can our listeners find more information about HHS, and how or who can they contact if they wanted to get in contact with your office?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different resources I want to plug here. If it's specifically related to Indian Health Service and tribal issues, we have a Tribal Affairs email. So you can email tribalaffairs at hhs.gov. If you're looking for low-cost insurance, I mentioned healthcare.gov earlier. Sometimes those forms and insurance can be very complicated. So I really encourage folks to also look for enrollment assisters in their local community. And one of the best places to go is at a health center, like Native Health. You can look for your closest health center at findahealthcenter.hrsa.gov. Also, if you're looking for mental health support, we also have findsupport.gov. So those are a couple of the resources that we have at HHS.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Reynoso, for coming in today. You gave us a lot of great information today, and we really appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we'll learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion at Honor Health with Evander Scott. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org. Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. In the studio with me is Evander Scott, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Honor Health. Hello, Evander. It's an honor to have you on our show today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and background?
Yeah, you bet. As stated, my name is Evander Scott. Evander is a family name, so that's name was passed down to me. But I come from the Dene Nation up in the northern part of Arizona. I am Kia'ani. I guess Navajo introduction would make sense. Kia'ani nishle. But atni bashashin. Ashin dashichedo tlashi dashinale. So I'm of the Towering House people clan, born for the Folding Arms people clan. The Salt people clan are my maternal grandfathers, and my the Red Bottom people are my paternal grandfathers. So I come from an area up there called, we call it Chejinta, or Nitdeteen is what they kind of talk about as well. It's called Tisto. It's just about 40 miles north of Winslow. And I was born and raised up there, and I moved down here to Phoenix back in 1987. So I've been down here since.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. And diving into DEI, can you tell us about the programs you do at Honor Health, and why is it important?
Well, one thing I like to stress about diversity, equity, inclusion work is it's not a program. Diversity, equity, inclusion should be embedded in everything we do as an organization. In life, it's just not about a company or an organization. I think it's really about understanding and really grasping and acknowledging that people are different. That's the diversity part. It's a fact. And that we're all in this world trying to make our way and trying to be fair and equitable. That's what it's about. It's about fairness and how we treat each other. And then, what COVID taught us is the idea that we got so disconnected during that time. We were all social beings. We need to be included, and we need to have our voice heard. So that's the inclusive part of it. That's the DE&I, and the outcome of that is really a sense of belonging. So that's really the work I'm doing currently at Honor Health, is really trying to foster a culture where people's background, their diversity is acknowledged, and that they're treated fairly, and that they're being included. Their voice is heard, so they have a sense of belonging. So it's that sense of home. They feel like they belong, and they feel like they're cared for.
And what influenced or encouraged you to take on this DEI director role?
That's a good question. As I reflect on this work, my entire career has been involved with training and development, education, training and development, and more recently, in the past decade or so, leadership development, doing culture work. And in hindsight now, as I really look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and the work that surrounds that, I've been doing it all along, because if you look at leadership development, if you really want to be a good, capable leader, and you're leading a team of individuals, you got to recognize they're all different. They all have different talents, different strengths, and they have different communication styles. So that's diversity work. So it was just a natural move for me, I think, moving into this work, because it's an extension. I like to say that it's leadership development at a higher level. And when I say leadership, it's not just people leadership as far as a formal leadership. It's everyone. It's self-leadership. So everyone in an organization has the capability to lead and influence people and demonstrate diversity, equity, inclusive type of diversity, equitable and inclusive type of behaviors. So that's kind of how I equate it and how I moved into this role. And it was just kind of a natural fit for me.
Mm-hmm. And what exactly does it cover?
It covers the full gamut of the workplace. Mm-hmm. It's how we're looking to attract and recruit people, into the workplace. We got to recognize, you can look at it from, diversity has its foundation in social justice and, civil rights. So you can approach diversity from the standpoint of, I want to hire more people of color. Mm-hmm. Marginalized people. I want to bring in people like that. And a lot of times it's about organizations and the organization or communities they serve. It's about representation. It's like in healthcare. If we're serving a population that is mainly people of color, it helps when you have people of color who are doing the caregiving. It's like that for any industry. So that's one aspect of it, I think. So it's in recruitment. It's also just in when you do have people on board. Most people, they want to grow and develop within their organizations. So it's how you meet them where they are and recognize their strengths, recognize their opportunities, otherwise called weaknesses, and learn to develop them and help them get involved in that. So that's being inclusive. And then it's also in maybe who you're targeting to serve. When you're in healthcare, you have a hospital or you have locations, practices, medical centers, medical practices, and you have to look at the populations you serve, and you have to recognize that you got to do all you can to meet their needs where they are. So it's that, what I like to call interpersonal savvy. If at an individual level, a patient comes in, a customer comes in, to your store, any place, it's meeting them where they are. So it's kind of embedded in every aspect of the work we do. Mm-hmm. For me, particularly, it's a lot of my work is focused on internally about building our human capital from the standpoint of our workforce, and it's also about the patients we serve. So I'm kind of supporting two roles in the work that I do right now.
Oh, wow. And have there been any challenges to your work?
No, it's pretty simple. There's tremendous challenge. Just mention the word diversity to anyone out in society. It's politicized, it's weaponized, and the biggest challenge, I think, is getting people to have a different mindset about it. It's not always about race, gender, or sexuality. It's a lot of times the true power in leveraging a diverse workforce is what's below the surface. Mm-hmm. It's understanding what people bring to the table, their special talents, their gifts, their strengths, and even their fears, where there's opportunity. It's their mindset. It's how they communicate. So I think that's probably the challenge today, is that everyone feels they don't have time. Mm-hmm. You have to make time. You have to stop and ask someone how they're doing. How do you, when you have an engaged, a time of engagement talking with them, maybe you're their leader and you have to ask them, how did that go? How did that feel for you? Is there something you want me to stop, start, or continue doing? Mm-hmm. And that takes time to do. Today, we're so moving so fast, and that we don't take time to do that. And then even with what COVID did, it's getting back in person again. I had a choice today of coming and doing this in person or over the phone. I specifically said I want to be in person because I want to model that behavior of getting back in person. So it's just about managing our time. That's the biggest thing, I think, the biggest challenge. And also, it's probably just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people feel that they have to have the right thing to say, the right way to say it, when really that other person, all they really want is for you to show up like a human being and be vulnerable and be open and acknowledge when you say the wrong thing, and just own it. And then apologize and mean it, and then start over again. I think that's what resonates today, is people just want people to be true and authentic in how they show up.
And what role do you think employee resource group play in DEI?
There's a lot of organizations out there, and what I'm trying to do as well is just really leverage the spirit of employee resource groups. And what the power that brings is employee resource groups. We call it at our organization, we call it people resource groups, mm-hmm. because we want to be inclusive in our language. When we say employee resource groups, there are some populations out there who maybe aren't employed by our company. They're saying, oh, it's for them. People resource groups is more inclusive, which means we're recognizing volunteers, we're recognizing individuals who are not directly employed by our company, even community members. So people resource groups are voluntary, they're employee-led or team member-led. And that's the power in it. That's given power back to the people themselves. And it really takes, as well, for it to really succeed, is it takes executive sponsorship. Mm-hmm. Someone has to step up and say, I want to help support this group. And, the power of the resource groups as well is that they can be focused on identity. If you have affinity, or if you are part of this group, this type of identity, whether it's race, ethnicity, it could be veteran status, it could be physician, it could be any type of identity, you could build resource groups around that. It also could be around interests. I have an interest in well-being. I have an interest in underwater basket weaving. Let's form a group around that, right? It could be something like that. But that's the power of it, is if you're in an organization and you can recognize and acknowledge across the people that they have a common interest in some type of identity or in interest in a topic, you can form groups around that and you can drive change. And that's probably the biggest power of employee resource groups, people resource groups, is the capability they have to really drive change from a place that people like to say bottom up. I don't like to say bottom up, because I look at organizations more from across, not top down, but they can drive change from an individual contributor standpoint, and they can influence people. So that's the power of resource groups.
Oh, yeah, and I definitely love that idea of people's resource group. But what are a few methods you use to educate employees on DEI in the workplace?
A few methods, I go back to, like I said, it's just an extension of how you help someone grow and develop. Mm-hmm. It's a great example is, what's your communication style? How do you prefer me to communicate to you? How do you prefer to get feedback? It doesn't have to come from your upline leader. Mm-hmm. It could be peer-to-peer. It's being open and being inquiry-based. I think that's probably the biggest capability people can have now, is to, rather than go in and tell, go in and ask. Mm-hmm. Ask good, insightful questions. I always like to say that powerful questions result in powerful answers, so if you can ask good questions. So that's a skill in itself that outside of DEI, it's a great skill. That the capability, I think, is to know what to ask and how to ask a question. So that's one for sure, and it's really people, I like to say, for a person to be open and honest and say it's okay to say, I don't know this, so I'm going to ask you how you prefer this, or I don't know this, I'm going to ask you your perspective. So those are simple tactics. I always like to say in my organization, what I'm trying to do is make this approach to developing a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment where people have a sense of belonging, just making it so embarrassingly simple. And that's what it is. It's getting back to the fundamentals of how you treat one another. There's more strategic tactics, but I think it's just starting at that level. And to me, it's all about building community. It's all about building community. And being in community means that you have that sense of belonging. When a person has that sense of belonging, they feel they're cared for, they feel respected, they feel valued. That's only one part of belonging. The other part of belonging is, since I feel that way, I feel I have co-ownership in this. When I feel I have co-ownership in this, I'm accountable for it. And I'm going to give discretionary effort. So that's the beauty, I think, of the community and DEI work, is if you can get a person to feel that sense of belonging and that ownership, then that's a special place to be, because they'll act and behave in a different way.
That is true. You influence their behavior. I would like to thank you, Evander, for coming in today to tell us all of this great information about DEI, and thank you so much for sharing all of your advice and all of the great work you're doing as well.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Up next, I'll chat with Stanford Lake, owner of Hawan LLC. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health's patient enrollment specialist can help you enroll, renew, or update your access information. This can be done in person, on the phone, or Zoom, days, nights, or weekends. It's fast, easy, and can make a difference in keeping your healthcare coverage. For more information, call 602-285-9492. Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. Stanford Lake is the owner and project manager of Hawan LLC, a Navajo-owned consulting company dedicated to empowering indigenous communities, Native-owned enterprises, and advancing STEM initiatives. Hello, Stanford. It's an honor to have you on our show today.
Thank you for having me on your show today.
Absolutely. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
My name is Stanford Lake. I'm originally from Kayenta, Arizona, and currently living here in Prescott Valley, Arizona. I'm Diné from the Navajo Nation. And my 4 clans, which we usually introduce, is Kizafan Shlon, Torichin, Bashichin, Kia Ane Dashache, Kohane Tashinal, Hatai Dimensla, Tonesha de Yisinasha. So that's my introduction as a Navajo person. Sort of like our DNA of our past history of our ancestors, and just always good to always greet other Diné and also to the world.
Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing that, Stanford. And it sounds like we are closely related. I am Kintlachini Nishle and Twitachini Bashishchin.
Yep, definitely.
Yes. So please tell us about Howan LLC and its history from the start.
In 2018, I was part of a ACES STEM business cohort, and in the cohort was what type of business can you start, but also it has to be related to STEM. So from that, I started a company called Howan LLC. Howan means the home for us Navajo people. So also my logo, what I wanted to incorporate in my logo was also the original dwelling of the Navajo people, which is the Hogan. And also it was more of a dedication to my late Nolly lady. She lived up to 103 years old, herding sheep all her life on Black Mesa, Arizona. She recently passed away like 3 weeks ago. So in a way, it comes back as a remembrance of her doing all of that. So.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry about your loss, but I'm happy that you are able to remember her in this way. Stanford, so have you always been interested in STEM at a young age before you joined the ACES STEM cohort?
I guess when I was younger, I wasn't really aware of STEM or like the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all of that. I never thought about that. I went through my grade school, and then once I got to high school is when I started to be interested in mathematics, and I was really good at that. So I went to some summer enrichment class programs like INAU and Nizhoni Camp, and also the ASU Honors Math and Science program. So it really opened up my doors to pursue a career in engineering, but also maybe in construction. So.
Oh, wow. That sounds so amazing to get all those opportunities in high school that really opened up the doors to your current career. But tell us about Howan LLC. What kind of consulting services do you provide?
The type of consulting service I provide mainly is project management, meaning either as a designer or as a construction management person, is to incorporate ideas of sort of like a building or maybe a roadway and try to put together the stakeholders and develop a project out of that. And then along the course from the design into construction, I sort of, I guess you could say, supervise and make sure everything's implemented not only to the drawings but to code, so that these structures and even roadways and things that are being constructed, that they last for a long time and they're energy efficient. And then the other part of it is trying to ensure that these deliverables, it also honors tribal culture, because sometimes we don't understand, and as an outsider coming back to the different reservations, we have to also research what kind of culture they have and sort of incorporate that so that we're all on the same page and we're moving towards a goal and stuff like that. So that's the main service I got.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It sounds like your work really has a lot of different parts in what you do. And you mentioned about being sensitive to tribal cultures. So how do you bring an indigenous perspective into your work?
Well, it starts with a lot of kickoff meeting during design phases. Sometimes I might be the only American Indian member of the design team and the rest of our non-native. So I sort of become that person, I guess you can call it tribal liaison, and work with the stakeholders. In this case, it would probably be a tribal department like Navajo Housing Authority or, say, the White River Indian Tribe Housing. So there's ways to communicate to them. And afterwards, I do get a lot of response from them saying, what did they say, or what some of these languages are really difficult, like they're really too advanced. So I bring it down to them to let them know this is what they're talking about. So those are one areas when it comes down to the start of each project. So I guess you can say trying to incorporate that there is things that we also have to honor. Maybe they have taboos, or there's certain way that they function from their culture, so try to respect stuff like that. So I think that's the way I approach my work and make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Stanford, can you tell us about some of your recent projects?
One of the recent projects I'm currently doing is working with the Navajo Housing Authority, a general contractor from Albuquerque, and also a Navajo architect from Albuquerque. And so I'm sort of on their design team, also probably most likely doing construction administration during construction. So we're putting together a 2-story apartment for the employees for the main area in Window Rock. So we're moving fast along. It's a design-build project, and it's already has a general contractor on board and the architects there. So it's going to be a pretty fast-moved project. So I usually like to be in those type of situations, design-build they call it, where every party of team are there from start to finish. So that's one of my recent projects. And then probably another project, Navajo Nation Historic Preservation Project for the Navajo Nation Chamber, where the Navajo Nation Council members are at. And that was one of the most rewarding projects I've been on. It's one of the most difficult projects I've been on, was trying to retrofit the exterior Vega log beams that are up on the upper roof. That we had to somehow remove a lot of that decayed logs and replace it with new logs, and we need to match the existing logs with the existing logs. So it took a lot of advanced engineering doing that, a lot of structural 3D analysis to put that together, and using the latest technology, meaning AutoCAD, Revit, and then just using softwares to put that together. And then once construction started, then I was on site all the time to make sure that for following the drawings, that every bolt was put in place correctly, and then when they remove all the shoring from underneath from the inside of the chamber, that it doesn't deflect down, I believe, a 1/4 inch. So that was sort of a difficult but rewarding. The rewarding side of it was a year later, we were invited to the Arizona State location in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were rewarded the Outstanding Historic Preservation Project. The Navajo Nation speaker at the time was there. The president was also invited too. So, but all in all, it was really one of the most difficult and rewarding. So that's how these projects go.
Oh, wow. That sounds all very exciting and so amazing of all the work that you're doing. Stanford, can you let our listeners know where they can find more information about Howan LLC and how they can contact you?
I have a website. It's Howan, HOOTHAN, LLC.com, HowanLLC.com. And my phone number is on the website at the very bottom, and it shows that the contact. My phone number is 928-421-3813, and also my contact from my emails there, which is info@howanllc.com. So, and then also I have a couple social media platforms that I'm on, like TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So I do provide some areas of sort of putting out maybe weekly things like tips and tricks of the business world, especially in the native world, like where to go, where to register, how to become a priority one with Navajo Nation. Stuff like that, I sort of upload those information so that they can succeed and move a lot faster and be out there for the people. So that's the reason why I have those social media.
Wow, that is so awesome. We'll definitely follow you there. But I would like to thank you, Stanford, for coming on air with us today to tell us all of the great work you're doing with Hwan LLC and also giving us a background on how you got there.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, supported by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Audio editing by Javier Quiroga, and the executive producer is Susan Levy. And I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. We hope you tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please email us at nativetalkaz@radiophoenix.org.